Open at 7 o'clock, and welcome everyone to this evening's meeting at Ku-ring-gai Council. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here this evening. As councillors, we are entrusted with the responsibility of representing the diverse interests of our residents. Let us work together in a collaborative spirit, respect diverse opinions and seek common ground for the good of Ku-ring-gai. Before we begin, I would like to outline a few procedures in relation to this evening's meeting of Council. This meeting is being recorded and webcast live on Council's website. Only councillors and council staff will be shown on camera. Attendees must not make a recording or photograph of the meeting without prior approval. Council meetings are open to the public as observers only. In line with the Code of Meeting Practice, members of the public can address Council via the monthly public forum. Council may close part of the meeting to deal with certain confidential matters in accordance with Section 10A of the Local Government Act. These discussions will not be open to the public and will not be webcast. All attendees must comply with the Code of Meeting Practice and other relevant Council codes, policies and procedures. Attendees must refrain from engaging in disorderly conduct, public alleged breaches of the Council's Code of Conduct or making other potentially defamatory statements. Councillors, council staff and members of the public must ensure that mobile phones are turned to silent during the meeting. Councillors and council staff must declare and manage any conflicts of interest that they may have on any item of business that is on the agenda this evening. Are there any apologies for councillors? There are no apologies. Are there any apologies for staff?
There are no apologies for staff, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any conflict of interest declarations for councillors? There are none. Are there any conflict of interest declarations for staff?
There are no declarations from staff, Madam Mayor.
Are there any documents circulated in the Council's papers to be dealt with at an appropriate time during the meeting?
Madam Mayor, there is one document, a memo dated 29 October from the Director of Strategy and Environment to the Mayor and Councillors, titled GB1 Planning for Better Outcomes, Alternate Scenarios to the Todd SEP.
Are there any reports to be considered in a closed meeting and not released to the press and public?
There are, Madam Mayor. There is report C1, Land and Environment Court of New South Wales Todd SEP, and it's attachment 1, Merrill Minute 13 August 2024. There's report C2, Transport for New South Wales Commuter Car Park Funding Deed for the Linfield Village Hub Legal Advice, with its attachment 1, Shaw Reynolds Legal Advice 21 October 2023. There is also the attachment for GB1 being Planning for Better Outcomes, Alternative Scenarios to the Todd SEP. Its attachment 1 is confidential, which is called Atlas Economics Todd Feasibility Advice.
Thank you. With the confirmation of minutes, the minutes of the previous meeting will be going to the November ordinary meeting. Do we have any petitions that have been received by councillors or staff? General Manager.
None from the staff, Madam Mayor.
Any from the councillors? No petitions. I'd like to now invite councillors to nominate any items on the agenda that they wish to have a site inspection for. That looks like none. General business. Can I please ask a councillor to nominate any items on the agenda that they wish to adopt as per the officer's recommendation, allowing for minor changes without debate? Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move item C2, Transport for New South Wales Commuter Car Park Funding Deed for Linfield Village Hub Legal Advice. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. And I
Thank
seek
you.
second.
Do we seek a seconder? That is Councillor Taylor is before you. Okay. Would anyone like to speak? Okay, no, that's all right. So is that without debate, Councillor Nye? Thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is unanimous. That is carried. Are there any other items of general business? Okay, we will then start with GB1. Planning for better outcomes, alternative scenarios to the Todd SEP. Do I have a mover for GB1? Councillor Nye. And a seconder, Councillor Taylor.
I would like to move something that I prepared with Eliza about half an hour ago, where we split up 3 points. So this is basically the officer's recommendation, the inclusion of the points from the Greens yesterday, but also simplified so that there's 10 points instead of 14. So, can I speak to this?
Are you moving this
Yeah,
in
yeah, I'm-
seriatim or? No.
I will speak to this first. Councillor Taylor can second. If someone wants to move for this to be in seriatim later, they can.
Okay,
So,
no worries.
as a procedural.
Go ahead then, Councillor Nye.
Okay, thank you. In November 2023, the New South Wales Government dissolved the Greater Cities Commission along with any long-term infrastructure and housing plan that Sydney had in place. In November 2023, Ku-ring-gai also proactively wrote to the Planning Minister stating that we would like to meet and discuss the approach to housing and infrastructure. This meeting was eventually granted on the 29th of February 24, where the Minister said that based on his extensive modelling, the suburbs of Roseville, Linfield, Killawa and Gordon must become transport-oriented development precincts and that no other train station within our LGA has adequate infrastructure to support the scale of development. He also said that these 4 stations must become Todd precincts and that there was no option to opt or swap out. We asked the Planning Minister whether we can have a 12-month deferred commencement to come up with alternate scenarios and consult with the community, and he said no. But he did say that he was willing to lift the Todd max if Council came up with alternate plans that meet or exceed the original policy objectives. After several more weeks of discussions and a second meeting on the 2nd of May, it was apparent that the New South Wales Government had no interest in giving Ku-ring-gai residents the opportunity to properly plan housing and infrastructure, and the Todd SEP provisions were imposed on Ku-ring-gai. At an extraordinary meeting on the 8th of May, Council resolved unanimously to commence legal action to invalidate the Todd, as well as to prepare alternate long-term scenarios for these 4 Todd precincts. The preparation of these scenarios was not easy and took considerable time. Each of these scenarios before us tonight are designed to meet or exceed the state's target of 22,500 while improving on heritage, urban canopy and infrastructure outcomes. These scenarios are by no means perfect. Each scenario has strengths and flaws, and my preference is that all scenarios are put to public exhibition so that members of the public can formally tell us which ones they like, which ones they don't like, and their reasons why. After the public exhibition, Council staff will consider the feedback and fine-tune these scenarios. Council might then select a preferred scenario as a basis for updating our local environment plan. The process of updating the LEP is quite lengthy. Department of Planning guidelines state 420 working days from end to end. But we hope that the New South Wales Government will expedite the process so that we can get on with delivering housing as per the timing of our requested 12-month deferred commencement. I now want to make brief comments on each scenario. Scenarios 3A and 3B seek to protect all of our heritage conservation areas while at the cost of additional uplift in the town centre and or expanding beyond 400 metres. Many residents may find the heights too imposing and they are welcome to provide that feedback as part of the public exhibition process. I suspect scenario 3A will not be supported by Council next year, but it's good to put it out to the public so that they know what a worst case scenario looks like. I like scenario 3B a lot, but I'm not certain whether it will have the Planning Minister's approval, as he previously thought it would clash with low and mid-rise changes yet to be finalised. Scenario 2 seeks to protect 78% of our heritage conservation areas while providing mild uplift in the town centre. There are some benefits to this, although there are also peculiarities, such as the destruction of HCAs, while non-HCA land is left at 2 stories. We wait to receive public feedback on these matters. Scenario 2B is the one that we requested as a minor amendment case back on the 8th of May, and we are proposing that this too goes out to public exhibition after some fine-tuning by our staff. It only saves a third of the HCAs, and I personally do not think it is as good as the other scenarios. However, I think it's very important for 2B to go out for public comment. I think back to September 2020 with Ku-ring-gai's draft housing strategy, where staff proposed 3 housing options and councillors were bombarded with over 1,200 emails, many residents criticising council for not making a 4th option available. From this experience, I think it's important to give residents all 5 scenarios representing the full spectrum of possibilities, silencing any complaints that council has withheld scenarios from the public feedback process. Finally, I'd like to say that as part of the public feedback process, I encourage all councillors to look at the quality, rationale and motivations behind each submission, rather than the number of residents offering support for or opposition against each scenario. There will be residents providing feedback that maximises their short-term land value. But as councillors, we are looking out for the best interests of our residents over the next 100 years. So thank you for your time, and I understand later on there may be a procedural motion to vote on this area item.
Councillor Taylor, a seconder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the record, I believe the state government's Todd new dwelling targets are unreasonable and infeasible for Lower Ku-ring-gai. In the absence of reducing the targets, I'm supporting the public exhibition of the scenario analysis that council staff have delivered for tonight. Let's hear what the community thinks of these scenarios.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Smith.
Madam Mayor, I think just one thing I think we just need to flesh out a little bit here is in relation to the legal matter that we've actually got coming up with the state government. And before we actually kick this off, I wouldn't mind asking a few questions through you to Mr. Taylor, our in-house lawyer, if I may.
Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Taylor, I'm going to stand with my back to you. Just in relation to this, what we're going into exhibition, can you please advise if there's going to be any impact or any concern that we should have in relation to the matter that we are taking the New South Wales State Government to court with? Could you please expand on that for us? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. The legal proceedings the Council is currently taking part in relates to a challenge to the validity of the amendment to the housing SEP that brought in the SEP controls. The scenarios that are currently before Council for this item represent alternatives to that, so they don't have any direct impact on the subject matter of those proceedings, although obviously they both relate to planning outcomes, potential planning outcomes in Ku-ring-gai.
So are you saying that even though if we are to push forward and to go into exhibition, I suppose demonstrating to the state government that we are looking for alternates to put forward to the community, that it's not going, there's nothing that is going to impact legally on us is because we've started or commenced in this position? Just to confirm.
There's no legal impact on any decision of the nature the current company moved on the proceedings. I can't really comment on political impacts, however.
Okay, well, I think that, so potentially what we're talking about is politically, is whether or not it looks like, which I think that there is a little bit of that concern in the community at the moment. I've had from a couple of councillors that the concern is that we've gone into this and doing exhibiting these particular scenarios that have been put forward, that we're dropping the legal case, but that's not the case. But thank you for clearing that up. Thank you.
Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to this? Okay. Then, Councillor Nye, would you like to sum up? Oh, sorry.
I've just got a question through you to Councillor Ward, I guess. Would you like to vote for some of this in Syria?
No. No.
No. Okay. So as is all on that. Right. Okay.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. May I ask a question through to you, to Director Watson? I did warn Mr. Watson that he would be answering some questions this evening. Just in relation to the work that the council staff have done on this, could you just give us just a rather brief description of the scenarios, and then possibly, I suppose, the latest one that's come into the Greens tonight, if that is going to sort of create any impact or anything that is going to be confusing if this particular one was to go out with the ones that have been prepared with the staff. My main concern why I'm bringing it up is quite often we're putting it out there to the community to make a decision, and I suppose there's always the risk with too many options we don't get a real sense of where the community's at. I'm mindful as well that all these scenarios that are going forward that the state government has actually pushed upon us is going to put our community against one another in that are just inside the TODs or outside the TODs. So could I just get a further explanation just on the three scenarios the council staff are prepared, and if the latest one on the Greens that I just haven't had the opportunity to go through, if that is going to have any confusion or impact, or it just doesn't work properly with what has been originally put on our papers.
Through you, Madam Mayor, councillors, there's a fair bit packed into that question. It's very difficult for me to answer that because I've been embedded in developing the scenarios, but I think the scenarios are perhaps sufficiently different that most people should be able to understand that they are. Some of them, scenario 1 is effectively the existing TOD. Scenario 2 is relatively likely its might change, saves 78% of the HCAs. The new 2B, I think from where I sit, and I did speak to council on night beforehand, it may be that when we work that one up in more detail, there is in fact greater numbers of dwellings come out of that one than some of the other scenarios. But again, I think it's significantly different or sufficiently different from scenario 2 that people could understand it. And then when you get to 3A and 3B, one of them you slip outside the existing TOD zone. So again, I think they're different. Ordinarily, we would like to go out with 3 scenarios. We're not too far off that, and I think they're sufficiently different that people will be able to tell the difference. Would we get more out of less scenarios? Perhaps we would, but 3 or some of these are already out in the public realm. We're already getting feedback on them. People seem to be quite able to distill the differences so far. I don't see that once we actually get some properly considered or better considered and more clearly prepared exhibition material, I'm hoping that it will be sufficiently obvious to everybody what the differences are. But again, that's why we've constructed the consultation program to involve drop-in sessions and things like that, where people, if they can't understand them or need help understanding them, where staff will be available to actually provide that help. So I hope that answers the question.
That does. Thank you very much. I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Councillor Balachandran.
Just doing Mayor, checking the rules. Can I speak to this at this point, or is it only questions?
No, you can speak to this.
I just want to speak in favour of placing scenarios. It's an opportunity really for Ku-ring-gai residents to be engaged in the change that is upon us, whether we like it or not, and the implications. As Ward Councillor for Gordon, I think the community that I represent, which is all of Ku-ring-gai, but particularly my ward, is keen to understand the implications of this and keen to see what it means. All the scenarios are actually, regardless of how kind of feasible they might be, all of them are important because they help the community see and reference one against the other for comparison. They show the trade-offs, and I think we want our community to understand the pros and cons of each scenario before giving us their considered perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you. I might just say a few words before we go to Oh, is there any other? Oh, sorry, Councillor Pevett. No, that's okay. You can go first. All right, no worries. Okay, that's fine. So this is just a couple of words from me. So unfortunately, I feel the state government has failed the community with no consultation in relation to the TOD implementation. TODs are now here. Tonight, we are voting on putting a number of these scenarios on public exhibition and consulting with the community over the next few weeks. By putting these scenarios on public exhibition, we're taking a critical step forward to give our community a voice. Over the next few weeks, we want to hear directly from residents on how you envisage our neighbourhoods, balancing the needs to accommodate housing whilst protecting our heritage, our tree canopy and the character of our neighbourhoods. I have already received several emails from residents, and I want to encourage everyone to keep reaching out. If we succeed in passing this motion tonight, let's make this process a collaborative step forward, one that reflects both the needs and unique character of our community. Councillor Pevett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, councillors, we always hear at every election we want more transparency, more consultation, more engagement with our residents. By having all the options on the table, this is what we are doing. We've had emails saying, oh, defer this meeting to the November one. No, this is actually the better way of dealing with it, because it is putting it out to the community sooner, and we're engaging the community sooner, and we're engaging everybody, not just one specific group. It's important to have everything on the table. We, as Councillor and I mentioned back then when we didn't have the fourth option, and everybody got upset and they wanted a fourth option. Well, nobody can complain this time because we've got all the options. Some you may like, some you may not like, but that's just the way it is. You're getting the full information, you are going to get engaged, you are going to get consulted, and we will have a lot of feedback coming in. Some will like various options up there, some will hate them. But we'll take that on board once all this consultation is done and it's collated and comes back in the new year. And that is the right way to do it. The idea of just deferring it to the end of November because it was an extraordinary meeting didn't cut the mustard for me. We want everybody to have their say. You know, the election's done, dusted, finished, we have to move on from that. We had certain councillors who were endorsed by certain activist groups and others that weren't. And some of those, in my case, I've been elected 4 times without that endorsement. So it's always better to appeal to the broader community as a councillor. That's what you are elected there to do. Put all the options on the table and listen to the wider community. Not just activist groups, single interest groups, those that are pushing a certain agenda on whatever topic it might well be. Because that is not reflective of the wider community as a whole. So it'll be interesting to see the feedback that we receive on these various options. And councillors, we shouldn't be afraid to put all of them out on the table. And we shouldn't be afraid to vote for all of them and not cherry pick them. We shouldn't be afraid to receive negative feedback. on some. Because we need feedback on all of them, whether it be positive or negative. Because if we do receive negative feedback, that's actually a good thing, because people are reading it. They've formed an opinion. They've engaged. They've looked at it. Has it worked for them? Maybe yes, maybe no. So feedback, regardless of whether it's positive or negative, is good. You know, we're all elected here to make decisions. Some of them won't be popular. We will see brickbats and bouquets. We can't always get the bouquets. In this situation where we've got some options there which yield 35 and 45 stories, which obviously doesn't please a number of people within the community, but that's just bad luck. This is what staff have actually come up with to meet those broad brush requirements where we're protecting heritage. So those in the gallery will get to provide their feedback along with all the other residents. So to council staff, it is good to see that you have been brave, or dare I say, courageous, drawing on the lines from the ex-minister. It's a courageous decision, Madam Mayor, isn't it, to put all the scenarios out? We could have cherry-picked and just pick all the nice ones, but we're not going to cherry-pick just the nice ones. We're going to put them all out there and take the feedback regardless of whether it's positive or negative.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, as you know, and most of the councillors know, this EGM is causing a great deal of anxiety in the community. Residents have voiced substantial concerns about the council's proposed planning alternatives. I agree that we need to be working on variations. I agree we need to be looking at alternatives. The concerns that are raised by the community is that there was very short notice about this particular meeting. We talk about communication, we talked about engaging, but this was a very short engagement process that we went through. Residents highlight to me that one of the reasons we went to court was that there was a lack of procedural fairness, that we did not get proper consultation with our community. That was one of the reasons why we went to court. The other reason was that we did not have sufficient infrastructure funds. So all of a sudden, we now have 3 scenarios that do not mention anything about infrastructure funds. So where is it magically coming from? Many residents only learned about the council's ENC through the Sydney Morning Herald. So you could just imagine their disappointment about a council who professes to consult with their residents. So these are some of the anxieties that are out there. They are not saying we don't want to communicate. They are not saying we don't want this. They are saying that we've been left out in the cold. The residents draw attention to the heavy congestion in Gordon and argue that it should not bear the brunt of new developments. While suburbs like Roseville and Killara remain unaffected in the community, which Councillor Nye also alluded to, and threatening Gordon's unique character. It is also worthy to note that councillors will discuss hub projects of Turramurra, Gordon and Linfield early in November of this year, which presumably will have an impact on what has been put forward to us here. There is a call for careful, considered planning that maintains the area's character and provides additional community facilities to support the increased population. Whilst residents understand the need for more housing, they stress that developments must be well planned. In essence, the residents of Ku-ring-gai are calling for better communication, fair and thoughtful planning, and more opportunities for community involvement in decision-making process. And yes, Councillor Pettit, this is perhaps a wonder, but they didn't perceive it that way, so perhaps we could do better next time. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? No. Councillor Nye, as the mover of the motion, would you like to sum up?
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So, as I previously said, we have 5 scenarios now. They represent a full spectrum of options that are available to the public under the criteria set by the state government. I don't agree with the criteria set by the state government, neither do many of the councillors here. I am of understanding that. However, they are still within those criteria and it is out there for discussion within a 12-month time frame as we had originally said. Now, in terms of the impacts it has on the community, I do understand that it will be pitting various members of the community against each other, but it's also important to note that that is already happening. The moment the housing SEP Todd, let's call it the Todd SEP anyway. The moment the Todd SEP landed in May, it was already having this effect. Some neighbours wanted to sell, some neighbours didn't want to sell, some wanted to have high rise against them, some didn't, some were concerned that they owned a heritage item and were missing out. There's all sorts of things going out there already, and this at least will take us towards a step where we can have certainty for all residents within Ku-ring-gai of what the future will be, and an opportunity for them to contribute to that level of, to that scenario that we're not choosing. In terms of communication, I'd just like to outline what has been done in the past. We did vote to look into these scenarios on the 8th of May in subsequent e-news, especially the one on the 31st of May, as well as in the articles in the Hornsby Ku-ring-gai Post, as well as on the monthly Mayoral Minutes, as well as in my electoral material, both the brochure and the how to vote. We talk about these scenarios being developed and consulted with the public in early November. So at least for Roseville Ward anyway, I can say that a lot of Roseville Ward residents have had multiple opportunities to know that this is coming up and they're expecting it, and I got a reasonable vote from it, so let's just proceed with that. I would just finally like to say, with the 35-45 stories, when I first saw it, I was quite surprised. It was quite a large number. It's not my personal preference. I don't see myself voting to support it in a few months' time. However, as we said before, here's a full range of options that the residents understand the trade-offs that each scenario comes with, and let the residents decide for themselves which ones make the most sense to them. As councillors, I urge all of us to consider the feedback that we receive in a sensible, balanced way, also understanding the motivations that sit behind the feedback that we receive. Is a resident proposing something just because they want a short-term win, or are they looking out for the long-term interests of Ku-ring-gai? And so I'd like to commend the staff for preparing these options. Some of these options in particular do a fantastic job of preserving our tree canopy, of protecting our heritage and our local character. On that, I'll finish up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nye. There being no other speakers, I will put this to the vote. Those in favour is unanimous, carried. GB2, Communication and Consultation Program, Alternative Scenarios to the Todd SEP. Do I have a mover? Councillor Spencer, and a seconder, Councillor Pettit. Thank you. Are there any speakers? Oh, sorry, Councillor Pettit. Spencer, would you reserve your right? Oh, okay. Sorry, Spencer, do you reserve? Okay. Okay. If there's no other speakers, we'll just put GB2 to the vote. All those in favour? That is unanimous. We now are into confidential matters. So I will firstly seek a motion to move items to remaining confidential along with the attachments. Can I have a mover? Councillor Ward, and seconded by Councillor Pettit. In accordance with Section 10A of the Local Government Act and the resolution of Council earlier this year, the item C1 is confidential and will be discussed to be closed to the public. I seek a motion to move into a confidential session. Councillors, I seek a motion. Councillor Nye.
I move that we move into confidential to discuss item C1.
Okay, thank you. And seconded by Councillor Wheatley. No, that was to remove the attachments, not to go into the session. Thank you. That's okay. Okay, thank you for members of the public, but I will now ask you to leave the chamber and I'll ask for council staff to suspend the webcast and close the doors. So thank you. Thank you. Welcome back to the council meeting. Item C1 was dealt with in confidential. No decision was taken and the matter has lapsed. Just before we finish off the meeting, we've got a couple of items. Is there any business without notice, subject to clause 9.3 of the Code of Meeting Practice? There is no business. I would like to thank councillors and staff and thank members of the public for their attendance. The webcast of this meeting will be available on the council website and minutes will be published within the next 2 working days. I declare the meeting closed at 8:56. Thank you.